What if I told you that the biggest threat to your retirement isn't a market crash, isn't inflation, isn't even running out of money too early? It's something almost nobody talks about. Financial advisors barely mention it. Your parents never warned you about it. And by the time most people figure it out, it's already too late to fix. I'm going to show you exactly what this mistake is, how it quietly drains 6 or 7 figures from ordinary people's retirements, and, most importantly, the simple decisions you can make today to make sure it never happens to you. Stick around because the third piece of this is the one that catches even financially savvy people off guard. Hey everyone, welcome back to Not Broke After 60, the channel where we help you make smart money moves and enjoy your retirement without the financial stress. I'm Artemis, and today we're talking about the $1 million retirement mistake nobody warns you about. Let's get into it. Here's the mistake in one sentence: treating retirement as a number instead of a plan. Most people spend their entire working life chasing a single figure. I need $1 million. I need 2 million. I need 25 times my annual expenses. And once they hit that number, they think they're safe. But retirement isn't a number. It's a sequence of decades filled with decisions. When to claim benefits, how to withdraw money, how to handle taxes, how to handle healthcare costs, how to handle market downturns that happen to hit right when you stop working. Here's an example. Picture 2 people, both retiring with exactly the same amount saved. Let's call them Person A and Person B. Person A retires and immediately starts pulling a fixed percentage from their portfolio every year, regardless of how the market is doing. Person B retires with a flexible plan, pulling less in down years, more in up years, and paying attention to when they take money from which accounts. Over a 30-year retirement, these 2 people can end up with wildly different outcomes, sometimes differing by hundreds of thousands of dollars, even though they started with the exact same pile of money, made the exact same average return on their investments, and worked the exact same number of years to get there. The only difference was what happened after they retired. That's the part almost nobody prepares for. Think about how much time gets spent on the accumulation phase of retirement. Entire industries exist to help you save more, invest smarter, and grow your nest egg. And that's valuable, don't get me wrong. But almost no equivalent attention gets paid to the spending phase, the part where you actually live off what you've built. It's like spending 20 years training for a cross-country road trip, obsessing over the car, the fuel efficiency and the mileage, and then getting in the driver's seat with no map, no route, and no idea which roads have potholes. That's the core of the mistake. Accumulating money without a plan for spending it is like training for a marathon and never learning the course. And this mistake shows up in 3 specific, very common ways. Let's break each one down. Mistake number 1, ignoring the order you withdraw money from. Most people have their savings spread across a few different types of accounts, something like a tax-deferred account, a tax-free account, and a regular taxable brokerage account. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The order in which you pull money from these accounts can change how much you keep by a huge margin. Why? Because each type of account is taxed differently. Traditional retirement accounts are usually taxed as ordinary income when you withdraw. Roth accounts are typically tax-free on withdrawal, since you already paid tax going in. Taxable brokerage accounts are usually taxed at capital gains rates, which are often lower than income tax rates. If you withdraw in the wrong order, say, draining your Roth account first because it feels free, you can end up pushing yourself into higher tax brackets later, paying more in Medicare premiums and losing years of tax-free growth you could have kept compounding. There's also a domino effect most people never see coming. Pulling too much from a traditional account in a single year can bump your taxable income high enough to trigger higher Medicare Part B and Part D premiums a couple years down the road through what's called an income-related adjustment. It can also affect how much of your Social Security benefit ends up being taxable. None of these are separate problems. They're all connected, and they all trace back to the same root cause: withdrawing money without a plan for the order. On the flip side, a thoughtful withdrawal strategy can sometimes stretch the same nest egg for years longer, simply by being smarter about which pot of money you touch and when. Some people benefit from blending withdrawals across account types every year, rather than draining one account completely before touching the next. Others benefit from strategically converting some traditional savings into a Roth account during lower income years, paying tax at a lower rate now to avoid a bigger tax bill later. This is a general illustration of a concept, not financial advice for your specific situation. The right order depends on your income, tax bracket, state, and goals. But the point stands. Most people never even think about this. They just pull money reactively without a plan. And reactive decisions are expensive decisions. Mistake number 2, underestimating how long retirement actually lasts. Here's a number that surprises most people. If you retire at 65 today, there's a very real chance you or your spouse could live into your 90s. That means your money might need to last 30 years or more. But here's the mistake. Most people plan their retirement spending as if it's a straight line. They imagine, I'll spend about the same amount every year until I run out. Real life doesn't work that way. Retirement spending tends to happen in waves. The early years are often more active and more expensive. Travel, hobbies, helping family, finally doing the things you put off for decades. The middle years, spending often naturally slows down as the travel bug fades and routines settle in. The later years, spending can rise again, often driven by healthcare and long-term care cost. And this is usually the phase people are the least prepared for, because it's the one they least want to think about. People who plan for a flat, straight-line retirement often either overspend early and panic later, or underspend early out of fear and miss out on the healthiest, most active years of their retirement. Years they can never get back. Think about that for a second. Somebody spends 40 years working, saving, sacrificing, telling themselves, I'll enjoy it later. And then when later finally arrives, fear of running out keeps them from actually enjoying any of it. That's not a hypothetical. That's an incredibly common story, and it's just as costly, in its own way, as running out of money completely. You worked your whole life for that money. The goal was never just to have it, it was to use it. The real danger here isn't just running out of money, it's the opposite mistake too. Being so afraid of running out that you live like you're broke when you're not. Both are versions of the same underlying problem. No real plan, just fear or guesswork filling the gap. And this is exactly why a phased approach to retirement spending matters so much, because it replaces guesswork and fear with an actual structure you can rely on. And now mistake number 3, the one I mentioned at the top. Even people who save diligently, invest wisely, and think they've done everything right can fall into this one. It's ignoring sequence of returns risk. Here's the plain English version. It's not just how much your investments earn on average over your lifetime that matters. It's when the good and bad years happen. Imagine 2 people who both average the exact same investment returns over 30 years. One of them happens to retire right before a few bad market years. The other retires right before a few good market years. Even with the same average return over time, the person who hit bad years early in retirement, while they were withdrawing money, can end up running out of money years, even decades before the other person. That's because when you're withdrawing money during a downturn, you're selling investments at a lower value, which permanently shrinks what's left to grow back. It's a completely different situation than someone who's still in the accumulation phase and just weathering a downturn. Because when you're not withdrawing, a downturn is just a number on a screen that recovers over time. But when you're withdrawing during that same downturn, you're locking in the loss permanently on the money you just took out. This is genuinely counterintuitive because we're taught to think about average returns our entire investing lives. Every projection, every retirement calculator, if you invest this much, you'll have this much by 65 chart is built on averages. But averages don't tell the whole story when you're taking money out along the way. 2 retirees with identical average returns over 3 decades can end up with wildly different outcomes purely based on the order those returns happened in. Good years first versus bad years first. It's one of the least intuitive, least talked about risk in all of personal finance. And it disproportionately affects people in the first 5 to 10 years of retirement, which is exactly why it deserves so much more attention than it gets. The people who avoid this pitfall are the ones who plan for it before they retire, by adjusting how much of their money is in more stable assets as they approach retirement, and by having some flexibility in their spending so they're not forced to sell investments at the worst possible time. Some people keep a cash cushion or a bucket of stable, lower volatility assets, specifically so that in a bad market year, they can draw from that cushion instead of selling stocks at a loss. Others build in flexibility on the spending side, so a bad year means dialing back discretionary spending for a year or 2, rather than being forced to sell investments no matter what the market's doing. Let me give you a quick real-world style example to tie all three of these together, because on their own they can feel abstract. Imagine a couple, we'll call them Rob and Linda, who retire at 65 with a decent nest egg split across a 401k, a Roth IRA, and a regular brokerage account. They did everything the traditional advice told them to do. They saved consistently. They hit their number. On paper, they were ready. But nobody ever told them about withdrawal order. So they started pulling money the simplest way they knew how, a little from everywhere, without thinking about taxes. Within a few years, they'd accidentally pushed themselves into a higher tax bracket and were paying more for Medicare than they expected, without ever understanding why. Nobody ever told them about spending phases either. So out of fear of running out of money, they lived extremely conservatively in their late 60s and early 70s, the years they were healthiest and most able to travel and enjoy themselves. By the time they finally felt safe enough to loosen up, their health had changed and a lot of that window was gone. And then, right as they retired, the market went through a rough patch. Because nobody had ever explained sequence of returns risk to them, they kept withdrawing the same amount regardless, selling investments at reduced values during the downturn. A few bad years early on ended up costing them far more than the same downturn would have cost someone who was still working and simply riding it out. None of these three mistakes on their own was catastrophic, but stacked together over 20 or 30 years, they quietly cost Rob and Linda a huge amount of what they'd worked their entire lives to build, not because they made one big obvious blunder, but because nobody ever explained the parts of retirement that even after the saving is done. That's the pattern I want you to walk away with today. It's rarely one dramatic mistake that derails a retirement. It's the slow, invisible cost of never having a real plan for the spending phase. The exact phase that most of the financial advice out there simply doesn't talk about. So how do you actually protect yourself against all three of these mistakes? Here's a simple three-part framework. First, build a real withdrawal plan, not just a savings goal. Long before you retire, think through which accounts you'll draw from, in what order, and how that affects your taxes. This is where talking to a qualified financial planner or tax professional can genuinely pay for itself many times over. The fee is small compared to what a poorly ordered withdrawal strategy can cost you. Second, plan your spending in phases, not a flat line. Expect your spending to shift across the decades of retirement. Build in room for both the active early years and the healthcare-heavy later years, and give yourself permission to actually spend during the years you're healthiest and most able to enjoy it. Third, protect your early retirement years from market swings. Consider having enough stable, lower-risk assets to cover a few years of expenses, so a bad market year right after you retire doesn't force you to sell investments at a loss. None of these are complicated, but almost nobody does all three because nobody ever explained why they matter. Now you know. And once you understand all three of these pieces together, you start to see why just save $1 million was always incomplete advice. The number matters, sure, but the number was never the finish line. It was just the starting point for a whole new set of decisions that most people never see coming. Here's the truth. The $1 million mistake isn't one big dramatic decision. It's the absence of a plan, playing out quietly over decades, one withdrawal at a time. The good news? Once you see it, it's completely avoidable. You don't need to be a genius and you don't need to be wealthy already. You just need a plan that goes beyond save as much as possible and hope for the best. That's really the difference between people who retire and feel constant anxiety about money and people who retire and actually feel free. It's rarely about how much they saved. It's about whether they had a plan for what came next. If you found this information helpful, we've put together something even more valuable for you, the Not Broke After 60 Survival Guide, a downloadable ebook packed with practical tools to help you take control of your finances after 60. It's just $19.95, and the link is right in the description below. Go grab your copy today. If this video helped you see retirement differently, hit subscribe. I break down real financial concepts like this every week, no hype, no sales pitch, just the stuff that actually matters. And if you want me to go deeper on any of the three mistakes we covered today, withdrawal order, spending phases, or sequence of returns risk, drop a comment and let me know which one and I'll make a full video on it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.